Honkai Star Rail is the next game coming from Hoyoverse, and I've been playing it for a little bit. In fact, I'd be lying if I said this was actually first impressions. It's technically like second and a half impressions because I've been in a previous beta from them before as CBT2. And now that the game is in its final beta, very, very close to launch, I kind of want to talk about some of the good and the bad in Honkai Star Rail and whether or not it's a game worth picking up for you. So today we're going to go over everything you need to know, as in how free-to-play friendly the game is, how the combat is the open world great, is the story great, etc, etc. Keep in mind, this is a closed beta. It is very close to release, so I don't imagine a lot of things are going to change, but I do have an official, like, well-scripted review that I am going to be working on closer to the game's official release, so that way I can have all of my thoughts finalized. So it is subject to change. But that said, first initial impressions, if I'm going to just give any words to describe my experience with Honkai Star Rail right off the bat, I enjoyed a lot. This is not a sponsored video. I wish it was sponsored. Please sponsor me, by the way. That would be great. It's really fun, but it might not be for everyone. So first off, let me just show off the open world, basically. It's like fake open world. It's not real open world because everything is sort of instanced areas. So if I look at my map here, there's a whole bunch of subsections that you can go to. So it's closer to something Final Fantasy where there's still zones, something before 15. But don't let that scare you away yet, because it's not necessarily a lost cause either. Within all of these zones, you actually have quite a bit of space to go and explore and fill out. And though you might run out of things to go and loot once you've 100% your map, there'll be a fair bit of challenges that you can do throughout the game, and it can make exploring and running around pretty fun. So basically, you can run around. There's some chests that you'll find. Now, me in the beta, I've picked up many of the chests because I wanted to pull for characters, and I'll talk about free-to-play friendliness and how long it took me to do that later. But as you can see, like, the maps do feel a lot bigger than they show, and it does feel open world. It does give you the illusion of open world. It's just not quite as free to explore, and you don't have as many things to find in this game as you do in something like Genshin Impact. So bear in mind, if you're looking for the next open world game, this might not be it. You can pick up the treasure chest. Treasure chest gives you a couple items, but that's basically all there is to the open world. It's nothing super complicated. So before I talk to you about the next thing that has to do with the open world, let's talk about the UI a little bit, and I'll talk about this in my review more. But a lot of people look at this and they go, wait a second, that's not Honkai Star Rail, that's Genshin Star Rail. You got all your buttons in the top right, you got your 2 attacks in the bottom right, you have your team on the right side, you have a quest in your mini map over on the left. Clearly that's just Genshin, right? I've talked to Twitch chat about this a lot. I think the issue is, one, when you have something that works, don't fix it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. The UI in this game is good, and a lot of people, though they might think it's lazy design, and while you could make the argument that it is lazy design, because I mean, just look at the character screen, like, it's pretty similar, it also is a very successful design. If you look at Genshin Impact's UI, Genshin's UI is beautiful. It's not super cluttered. You can see a ton of stuff in the middle of your screen. All the stuff around you isn't super distracting unless you play on a really small screen, and all of the menus being up here, all the quick access menus, is super nice, honestly. Is it lazy? You can make whatever argument you want for that, because I can see both sides of that. I can see, yeah, it's, you know, they copied and pasted something. But on the other hand, if they were to remake a whole user interface and try to make it as good as Genshin's, I think they would have a pretty hard time, because if I'm honest, Genshin just really nailed their UI. It's not that I don't think they can innovate, but I do think that it would be almost kind of useless to try to innovate the user interface when it just works so well. Basically, there's a lot of things in this game that are going to be very, very similar to Genshin Impact. They're going to look a lot like Genshin Impact, and I'll talk about this more in my review, but I guess overall my opinion of that is that it doesn't really matter as long as the game is fun and the UI is navigable, right? But let me know what you think down in the comments. So next up, I do want to talk about something that sort of relates to the open world and to the Genshin stuff. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of similarities with Genshin, and one of them is the Relic system. Now, the Relic system are basically going to be your artifact equivalents, and you also have Trailblaze power, which is basically your stamina equivalent, your resin equivalent. So you are going to have to farm artifacts in this game, and that was something I was not that excited to hear. Now, most gacha games have some form of artifacts. Genshin didn't invent the idea. Lots of gacha games have some sort of farmable main stat pieces you can equip because it allows you to build your characters and it keeps you playing every single day. That's how these games work, and I doubt it's going to change. But I think my problem with Star Rails in particular, there's a couple of them. First off, you have 4-piece sets, but the 4-piece sets can only go up to 4 pieces. What I mean by that is in Genshin, you have 5 artifact slots and you can have 4-piece sets. In this game, you have 4 artifact slots and 4-piece sets. Don't let that extra 2-piece deceive you, because the extra 2 pieces can't match sets, at least to my knowledge, with these artifacts. And if I'm wrong on that and there are a couple sets that match, then I will update that in the pinned comment. But as of right now, in my playing the game, these are 2 and 4-piece sets, and then this is a separate 2-set thing that you're not going to be able to combine with the other 4-piece set. And what that means is you don't have a flex piece. You don't have a piece that you can throw on. You don't have an off pyro damage goblet because you didn't get lucky enough to get an on-set pyro damage goblet. You don't have that option in this game. Going for the right main stats on 4 pieces feels kind of bad, and I am really bummed that they decided to go with this. Now, I will say I don't have official stat distributions. I do feel like it's a little bit easier in this game to get crit stats than it is in Genshin Impact, and I think you won't actually be abusing crit on every single build that you make, most likely. Again, first impressions beta, so that could change, and my opinion could change on that, but it's not like every single character in this game is building crit like every single character in Genshin, or almost every character in Genshin. But basically, you can get good main stats pretty easily. Substats are still going to be a pain in the ass. You have actually some new stats in here too, so aside from crit, you have things like speed, and I found that speed is actually harder to get than crit. Outgoing healing is pretty normal, but there's also new stats in here. You have things like break effect. Break effect is going to be useful for some characters. Defense and HP are more useful in this game than they are in Genshin, but you probably still won't farm them for everyone. You also have a speed stat, and this stat's kind of king, and honestly, I feel like this stat is sort of the new crit, so you may have a harder time getting it. But overall, artifact system is a little disappointing that it's back in the same way that it was in Genshin, and that you are going to have to sit there and farm for a really long time. These other 2 artifacts you basically unlock later in the game once you've gone through a certain point, and this will be the equivalent of your goblet, and this is one of the 2-piece sets, so luckily the goblet won't affect the main 4 pieces, but it still feels kind of bad. That said, on the other hand, you know, aside from the farming portion of it, the idea of an artifact system where you can build your characters, to me, is fun. It's just the farming specifically that I don't really care for, because it leaves a lot of your power up to RNG. Now, I will say there's one item in Honkai Star Rail that makes this a little bit better than Genshin, and that's going to be, God, I can't remember the name of it. I don't actually have one on the account, but there is an item in this game, I promise, that lets you choose a main stat for an artifact. You just create an artifact with a main stat. The substats will still be RNG, unfortunately. It does take a little bit of the stress of farming off of you if you can manage to get them every once in a while, because in this game, it feels like main stats are way more important than in plain old Genshin, where you have to really balance out all your substats. Now, I could be wrong for high-end content. Maybe that's not how it actually is, but in my experience, in my first impressions playing the game, the main stats have been the main focus. With that said, the other stuff is fairly straightforward. Traces are going to be your skills, and something that I really like that they did in this game is they made sort of skill trees. Now, you're gonna probably end up maxing most of these out anyways, but it costs a lot of materials to do so. It's just nice that you can sort of go and min-max in the specific way that you want to. If there's a stat that you don't really care about, like if I don't care about defense on Scylla, I don't have to worry about that, but I can go get this one. But in order to get the crit damage bonus, I do have to get the defense stat here, and I have to get lacerate and all of this stuff as well. So there is a tree form to it, but it's kind of cool. I do like it. And then your light cone is essentially your weapon. So you're not going to actually see these light cones on the field. You're just going to see whatever weapon your character has. But the light cones are going to be what gives you your buffs and your stats. Your buffs may come from the effect of a light cone and then like other characters if they give you buffs. But most of the building you're doing for a specific character is going to deal with the light cone and from the set effects of the artifacts. Or relics in this game. My bad. It's so much easier for me to default to artifacts. Now, what you'll notice is that some of these have little green icons in the top left. That means that they can be equipped and you can get the effect of them. If I wanted to equip one of these ones that's white where it's not green, that means that the effect will not work with that character. So I can't equip this one on Scylla because Scylla is not the same class. Now you might be wondering, what is a class? What do I have to worry about? So basically, there are 2 things you have to worry about with your characters. There is an element and there is a class. First off, the classes, they're called paths in this game. I just call them classes because that's what I'm used to. So the destruction is your damage dealers. The hunt is damage dealers that exceed in single target and sort of like bossing is another way to put that. The erudition is basically AoE focused characters. The harmony is going to be your buffers, your friendly buffers. The nihility is going to be your debuffers, so people that apply debuffs to enemies. The preservation is going to be your tanks, and the abundance is going to be your healers. So next up you have your elements, and you have 7 of these, and these are going to be physical, fire, ice, lightning, wind, quantum, and dory. And none of these elements work like Pokemon elements where like fire is super effective against ice. It's nothing like that. What happens is enemies have a bunch of weaknesses, and those weaknesses can break through a toughness bar. And once that toughness bar is broken, they take a little bit of extra damage from the toughness bar breaking, and then they also get a secondary effect relating to what actually broke their weakness. It also temporarily stuns them, so if they're charging a really big attack and you break their weakness, that cancels out that charge. These elements only mean anything for type coverage when you're fighting enemies enemies that are weak to specific elements. And outside of that, these don't really serve any other value. I will say if you break someone's weakness with the different elements, it changes things, but generally speaking, type coverage is going to be a big one, just depending on what enemies you fight and what sort of elements you need to bring into each kind of content. But just as an example, for the weakness bar, if you break it with physical, you apply a bleed damage over time. If you break it with ice, then you're going to apply a freeze to an enemy. If you break it with wind, you're basically getting a wind damage over time. If you break with fire, you get burning effect, which is again fire damage over time. Lightning is a lightning damage over time. Now quantum is going to apply damage over time as well, but it's also going to slightly delay enemies. And imaginary is not going to apply a damage over time. It's actually going to slow enemies down while also delaying their actions by imprisoning them. So these are pretty cool to play around with. Anyways, that was a long-winded explanation. So let's go farm some artifacts and I'll show you the combat of the game. All right, so here we are at this screen. This is what I was talking about. Basically, this shows their weaknesses, so you kind of want to build a team around it. Now, once you've over-leveled enough, it just doesn't really matter, right? So I can take this team in. Physical is going to be good sometimes. All these are going to be good sometimes, except for Sela is Quantum, and she doesn't really do much for us in this challenge, but she is going to hopefully break some weakness. And here we are in battle. So as you can see, there's basically two abilities that you have. Each character is going to have like a passive, an out of combat passive, and more. And actually to check this, if you forgot what they are in battle, you can actually go into the bottom left, which my camera is covering right now, and you can click on this little button. And you can go through, check the effects of your light cone, your basic attack, skill, ultimate, talent, and technique. Technique is the out of battle point that you can spend before you go in. Talent's like a passive. Basic attack is your non-skill point cost, and your skill is your skill point cost, and your ultimate is your ultimate. So basically, you see these points down here in the bottom right. This is how many skill points I have. If I use a basic attack, I gain 1 skill point. If I use a skill, I lose 1 skill point. And you can kind of see the switch there. Now, generally speaking, skills are going to be the more useful ones, but there's some characters that will just do a lot of damage on their front-loaded basic attack. But as you can see, none of these guys are weak to quantum, so this toughness bar, this white bar right here, isn't going to go down when I attack them at all. However, when I attack these guys, it'll break through their toughness bar a little bit. And because I broke his weakness with the imaginary element, he's imprisoned like I was mentioning before. So I'm going to go through here, and what you just saw me click on was an ultimate. And your ultimate you can activate at any time. You can see the turn priority in the top left, and that's who's going next, and that can be adjusted on the fly based on buffs and debuffs. But as you can see, now we're on Natasha. Next up is going to be Sela. We're going to half break the weakness here, and then I'm going to see if I can kill this bot with Sela's skill, even through the toughness. So you can totally do that. I didn't have enough damage to do it, but you can. Now I'm going to kill him with Welt. And Welt's ult is ready. You can't see behind my camera, but it is ready, and I can click it at any time. So we're on the second wave of enemies here. I'm also, by the way, I'm just moving in double speed. There's a regular speed option that is really cool and shows the animations in all their glory, but I plan double speed just because I got things to do, places to go. Gotta follow my rainbow, you know the whole thing. So it is currently Sela's turn, and Welt is up next. But because I have his ult, which you can't see again because it's behind my camera, I click on it, and he automatically skips ahead and goes in front of Sela, as you can see in the top right. Or left.
Survive or be destroyed. There is no other choice.
Now it's Sela's turn. They're all imprisoned and weakened. And Sela's passive is going to be that when she kills an enemy, she can get an extra attack. It basically only works once per turn per her, but it's really good. So now we get that secondary attack. And now it's gone, but I can use her ult to bring her forward, and then I can ult him. And so we're going to slowly but surely break this down. Now, here's something that I do think is kind of nice and respectful of your time, is that for a lot of the farming content, if you don't feel like playing one day, but you do need to farm your artifacts and you have a strong enough team, you can just hit this really nifty autoplay button, and it's just going to play through it for you. You set your phone down, go cook or something, and assuming your team is strong enough for it, you can just play through it on auto battle. It doesn't work like this all the time. You can't just auto battle all the time for free. The harder content in the game can't be auto battled. And a lot of the content you're not going to want to auto battle, because if I'm honest, the AI for auto battle is just kind of bad. It just spams skills and basic attacks and spams ults on cooldown unless you turn it off in the settings. But as you can see, because I didn't bring weaknesses for this guy, it's actually taken a fair bit of time. But because I'm leveled up enough, I can just brute force my way through it. Now those two fists on both sides are going to blow up. So my auto battle's not going to target it, and they're just going to blow up on me. But hypothetically, if you weren't auto battling, you could also target the fists and kill them. They would blow up and deal damage to the enemy. So that's a little bit of strategy that can go into this if you're not just over leveled in farming. Again, I'm hands-free right now. I'm not playing. And then Welt's going to ult, and this should kill him. And if not, it gets him really close. Okay, Sela probably kills here. And then the battle is over. That costs me 40 Trailblaze power. That was 40 of my 180. and I got 3 artifacts from it. Now, this isn't the highest level one. I don't know if the highest level one's going to give you more, but I do know that it gives you the 5-star ones. I just don't anticipate I'm going to hit a high enough level to farm the high level ones during this closed beta, so I'm just farming it up. But as you can see, we got some cool new stuff, so that's cool. The combat in this game seems really simple, and at its core it is. It's 2 buttons, turn-based, and then you have an ultimate button as well. But if you build teams around specific gimmicks like attack speed or things like that, or if the content requires you to stall longer and you have to switch up your team comp to be able to survive longer and debuff the enemy while they try to power up and kill you and hit an enrage timer, just things like that, it can be really fun to sort of mess around with your teams. Unlike Genshin, which relies on elemental reactions and then being able to just unga bunga your way through in a lot of cases with the right team builds, this game caters specific content so that you have to play a certain way and use specific characters, which is why it's really important that this game be free to play friendly, because for some of the harder content, if you don't have some of the characters that it's catering into a specific niche for, that could be a really bad thing. So that brings me to the next thing: free to play friendliness and endgame content. You get quite a few characters in this game for free. It's kind of nice to have coverage where you need coverage, right? The free characters you're gonna get are going to be MC, which does have access to specific elements and different classes. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil the story, but you guys will really enjoy it. And you also get March 7th, who's the mascot of the game, and she's going to be ice and also be a tank for you. She's going to not necessarily have a bunch of defense and HP herself, but she's going to be able to produce a shield for you, which is really nice. You get Dan Heng, who's going to be a wind damage dealer, primarily single target, and he's pretty strong as well for free to play. You're going to get yourself an Asta, and Asta, I believe, has the ability to be an absurdly broken unit in the end game. In the beginning of the game, it doesn't really make that big of a difference because you haven't built your characters yet, but she can buff your speed stat, and speed is really broken in this game. She also busts shields super well as a fire character, so that's cool. We just hit 2.5 million pre-registrations, so we'll be getting Serval for free as well. She's an Electro Erudition class. I don't know how to pronounce her name, and I don't want to mess it up, but we may be getting her for free as well. It looks like she's the free character from Spiral Abyss, kind of like how Xiangling you get free in Genshin Impact. We might be getting her for free as well, just for more type coverage, and she's Quantum. You're also going to be getting Herta for free, and Herta is also a super solid farming unit, so that's nice. And you're getting Natasha for free, and she's going to be a physical healer, so that's also pretty good. But overall, the free-to-play roster for this is actually pretty solid. If you invest in all of these characters, they are unironically good. Now, with that said, similar to other gacha games, there are 5-star versions of these characters that are going to be better than them. It's not necessarily like a 5-star pyro buffing character that does exactly what Asta does, but better, but there's going to be a lot of better units that you can get than the starting characters. That doesn't change the fact that the starting characters are pretty good. They're pretty strong. And I think most importantly, they cover most of your bases as a free-to-play for what elements you need to have. The only one we're missing at the moment is going to be an imaginary character. But outside of that, you should be able to get every single other element for free, and that should cover most of the game. So in that particular regard, the game is fairly free-to-play friendly. But with that said, I think they made a really big mistake with the gacha. So there was actually a beginner banner here, and the beginner banner is really nice because it guarantees you a 5-star within a certain amount of polls. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was somewhere between 30 and 50 polls, but you are guaranteed a 5-star. That means if you're re-rolling between the pre-registration bonuses and just the stuff you'll get from playing the game, you could re-roll pretty easily to just try to get the right standard 5-star if you wanted to. And also on top of that, once you get to 300 total polls on the standard banner, you can choose one of the 5 stars that is a standard 5-star to bring to your team. This is a pretty big deal. Genshin doesn't have anything like this. Now, I do need to be transparent with you though. The pity is not great. Some people justify this game and Genshin Impact having 90 pity as their hard pity as like being really good because FGO doesn't have a pity or didn't have a pity for years. But I feel like that's just so cope. It's like the whole thing where it's like we never stopped to ask why we were eating bricks in the first place. I have it worse, so this isn't that bad, but like it's still bad. 90 pity is a long ways to go. And the reason it works okay in Genshin Impact is because you have this giant open world just full of stuff, lots of quests and lots of open world content, chests, things to discover. And you have so much of that in Genshin Impact. And so you do have your soft pity at 75. At the beginning of the game, if you get to like AR 35 or something by then, if you've done everything you can probably guarantee a character going to 180 polls. Like, is it ideal? No, but you have the option to do it. There's so many more ways to get polls in Genshin Impact than there are ways to get polls in Honkai Star Rail. And that's why I'm disappointed that the pity in Honkai Star Rail is 90 with what I assume to be soft pity at 75, but to be honest, I don't really know because I pulled my first 5-star at 81 pulls. So with that in mind, it could be that 80 is soft pity in this game. It doesn't explicitly say it in the details if you go look through it right now where the soft pity is. It's just sort of implied that there is one. And so to put into perspective how bad this kind of feels, I have played up to, let me see where I'm at. I am Trailblaze level 33. I have done most of the beta content. I haven't completed all of it, but I've completed a large portion of it as far as the repeatable content goes, as far as the Stellar Jade farming goes. That's what basically Primo Gems are in this game, is Stellar Jade. I have done a lot of it. And it took me until level 31 to be able to get to 81 pity, where I had a 50-50 for Sela. That's right, 50-50 is back, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. Now, why this feels bad is because to get my very first 10 pull for this character, I had to play a really long time. Like, I was in this game for so long before I got my first 10 pull on this banner. You can get a couple pulls really early on. You get like 2 or 3, but it's not so much that it makes it super worth re-rolling unless you just really want this character and you really want to take advantage of that on your account. In which case, like, okay, I understand, but it's going to take you a long time. So with that said, this game, as far as the gacha goes, kind of scares me. Now, I will say, weapon banner in this game, significantly better than Genshin. Why? Because there's only one weapon on at a time. Maybe that'll change when these banners flip over, but as of recording this right now, there's one weapon on it at a time. It's a 25% chance to get a random other 5-star weapon instead. But the on banner, it looks like is only going to be one weapon. They didn't pair this with another off event weapon or anything like that. So in that case, it is a lot nicer because these weapons are a lot more necessary in this game than they are in something like Genshin Impact, I feel. But overall, I don't think the gacha in this game is headed in a good direction. To be clear, beta doesn't represent the amount of pulls we'll get in game 100%. But I do think it's kind of cope to assume that we're going to be getting more pulls than I've gotten in this beta when the game actually launches, considering they gave us 30 free pulls right off the bat in the beta. In a game like Genshin, where you can just spam random elemental reactions or just spam Hyper Bloom basically and clear content with even like pretty bad characters because their reaction is so strong, it's not as big of an issue if you can't get the 5-star units. But in this game, it does feel a lot more important to have specific characters that do specific things if you want to trivialize content. So that said, I really do hope they change it. I hope they lower pity, or I hope they find more ways to give out the gacha currency, because if they follow Genshin's model in a game like this, it's going to be really bad for free-to-play players. Despite the free-to-play cast actually being good, you won't be expecting to get a lot of 5-star characters. Now that brings me to my next point, which is the support system. Now, the support system is cool because if you've ever played FGO, you know how this works. You can bring a character in from your friends list or just from other players that are nearby. So I put Sela in my support. My friends can grab Sela and use my Sela to clear their content. Now, the sad part is you can't use it for everything. You can only use it for certain content in the game, and for what I found, that's mostly been farming nodes. As far as I know, you can't use it for Abyss. As far as I know, you can't use it for Simulated Universe. I'll update a pinned comment if I was wrong on that, but off the top of my head, that's what I remember. The support system is great because if you don't have really good characters, you can bring in a friend's character to help you out. But if they want this to be an extra huge success, they have to let us use it in Abyss. I understand that could make the game like way too easy in some instances, but otherwise this is literally just tools for farming and nothing else. And it's honestly kind of redundant because they give you good units to farm anyways. That's my hot take. That's my opinion on it. Anyways, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is endgame content and what is there to do after you've beaten the story of Honkai Star Rail. By the way, the story's really good. The writing's really good. I love it. I actually played through. I actually paid attention, and I was excited to do it the entire time. Let it be known that I enjoyed the story of Honkai Star Rail and all that I got to experience of it. I think the writing is a lot more mature. I think it's funnier. I think there's characters that are extremely fun to be around and not aggravating, and I think that you'll enjoy it too. So first thing I want to talk about is Simulated Universe. Now in the previous beta, I got through all of these. I haven't taken the time to finish Simulated Universe just yet on this account, but Simulated Universe is effectively a roguelite mode. Now I'm going to show you guys some gameplay in the background while I talk about this. Basically, in Simulated Universe, you pick up buffs, and these buffs can give you certain advantages in the coming fights. And those advantages can really stack up to where you have to fight an uber difficult boss, but if you built your stuff right, you can actually make it a super easy fight. And I think that's super fun. The way they've constructed this is amazing because it almost feels like you have so much say in the roguelite. If you've ever played Hades, it's like that, but it feels just really fun to try to build up all of your characters under certain gimmicks, because instead of one character you have to worry about, you have your 4 that you're playing with, and that's really fun. I really enjoyed Simulated Universe. I think it's a great game mode. I think once you've beaten it all the way, I don't know how repeatable it's going to be, but I know there is a weekly shop that sort of resets, and that is something that you can take advantage of and get some free goodies out of. So it is going to be worth redoing. I don't know how much or how often it's going to be worth redoing, but it's going to be good. And then next up is going to be your Abyss, which is called the Forgotten Hall. Now, in this beta, I haven't cleared everything just yet. In the previous beta, I was able to clear through the entire Abyss. And the way this works is instead of time, it's turn-based. However many rotations you have to go to, or cycles you have to go through before you can beat all of the enemies. Now, as you can see, the objectives: win with at least 8 cycles, win with at least 12, no more than 1 down characters. Those are your challenges to get stars. And then each one has a gimmick, and it's pretty fun. I actually really enjoy it. The downside is going to be that it's not as dynamic of gameplay as something like Genshin. So if you're used to Abyss being different every time because the enemies will attack you differently, or any sort of RNG factors in Abyss, that is not going to be as prevalent here. But I do enjoy the turn-based format of it more than I enjoy the live format of Genshin. That's personal preference for me. I just like the turn-based stuff a lot. But overall, I do think that Genshin's Abyss probably has a little bit more replay value than this one. Now, that said, I could be completely wrong. That's my first impression of the Abyss, or I guess like first and a half second impression of the Abyss. But I will say there are some really good rewards for the Abyss. You can get these 4-star Lightcones, and these are Lightcones that you're going to get one of, I believe, just by playing through the story. But they have some pretty good effects, and these are going to be basically the equivalent of like the craftable weapons from Genshin, except they are actually good. They're all really good and worth using. So that's something to keep in mind. I do really like this feature. And similarly, I don't know if I showed you Herta's shop, but let me show you the Simulated Universe shop from the game mode we just talked about. You can actually get 5-star Lightcones from Simulated Universe, and these 5-star Lightcones are no joke. They're unironically good Lightcones. You can also get these, which will refine the 5-star Lightcones, and that can help you out as a free-to-play a lot. So the only thing you're really missing out on as a free-to-play are the rate-up units and the new units, but as far as like weapons and stuff go, you do have some solid options. But going back to endgame, while I really do enjoy the endgame modes, I think that unless this game has constant events that are constantly switching out the content you can do with different gimmicks and things, or unless this game has some form of PvP, which I know so many people in the comments are going to be like, no, please, no PvP. What I'm saying is if the game doesn't have it, the repeatability of the end game is not going to be that much, and it's going to be a lower time commitment for you by the end of the game than something like Genshin Impact is if they don't keep up with that same amount of content cycle. The PvP thing, you can have whatever opinion you want on it. All I'm saying is that with less repeatable content at the end, that gives you meaning and purpose to replaying it. This game will definitely have less repeatable content unless they add some more stuff in, add some more events, faster patches, something to keep people coming back. And I'm just being honest about that. It's not going to be an MMO. You're not going to have a ton of stuff to do after you've caught up with everything outside of farming, and because you can auto farm, your commitment to this game is going to be relatively small. But with all of that said, what do I think about the game? I already told you at the beginning. I actually really like Honkai Star Rail. I have some gripes with the systems. It's not perfect. There's a lot of things that could be fixed about the game and could be made better, but I really do enjoy it. There's a lot of good things that it's doing. I like the simplicity of the turn-based, the music. Oh, the music is peak, by the way. I might make videos separately about the music because the music is so freaking good. And if you like Hoyoverse's character design, the characters in this game are fucking beautiful. They're gorgeous. They are amazing. I love them all so much. And so if you're looking for a pretty casual gacha game to pick up in terms of time commitment, it's not too bad to pick up. That said, gacha is evil. I don't want to encourage people to pick up gacha games because they're gacha and gacha is predatory, but I do think you will have a lot of fun in this game as a free-to-play player. And the reason I say that is because it is genuinely challenging, but you are given the units that you need to overcome many of the challenges in the game. So with all that being said, I really enjoy Honkai Star Rail, and I will be playing it at launch. I'll also be making a formal scripted review that synthesizes all of these things and any other thoughts that I have and anything that changes between now and release, so that way you guys can have a formal review to look at. But thank you guys so much for watching my first impressions of Honkai Star Rail. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I tried to cover everything that I could off the top of my head in this video, and I had a little bullet board next to me, but if there's anything I've missed, I would love to help you guys out. I'm also streaming this over on my Twitch at twitch.tv/Braxophone, so if you just want to see more of the game and kind of get to understand what it's like, go check it out. Until then, gamers, I'll catch you next time. See you later.